Hey everybody, what's up? It's Jamie Gilchrist, Industry Solution Evangelist for Autodesk Manufacturing. Today we're going to continue on with the Alias Basics and talk about grids. So exciting. I love grids. They're my favorite thing ever. Okay, all hyperbole aside, grids are a pretty useful tool inside of Alias to help you, especially in your early layout phases as you're setting up your surfaces. They can also be great tools for, snapping curves if you want, specifically, horizontal or vertical geometry in your curves. You can snap to the grids and then move your curve into a location where you need to have it placed. I use that feature all the time. So we're going to take a quick look here at how to kind of modify your grids and go from there. So, first things first, let's turn on the grids here using our marking menus, and then we're going to go under the preferences and change some of the colors of the grid. So under Preferences, Interface, User Colors, you see I bring up this dialog box here, and I've got a couple options here. I've got some sliders and I've got some little color windows. As I change the color windows, it brings up a color wheel where I can change the color. This actually happens globally to all your mesh, to the grid labels, to the grid mesh, fine grid mesh. Now with the sliders, I can change each of those objects individually. However, my color options are much more limited. So what I've done here is I've just gone through and I've made my grid blue while I've made the major axes of the grid white, just so I can have some contrast. Now another question that came up from a beginner user was, how do I change the grid presets? So if you bring up your palette and under the construction pane, you've got grid presets. Now what I'm doing here is just middle clicking and dropping that into my view shelf. Now I already had it in there, and so I'm going to go ahead and delete that, but that's how you get it moved into your shelves so you can keep your palette closed and kind of out of your way. So double clicking on the grid preset icon or shift clicking, I can bring up this dialog box and change my grid spacing, change the number of subdivisions, turn labels on or off, turn your nonum on, which if you're curious what your nonum is, it's a little triaxle icon down in the lower left corner of your perspective window, and shows you, gives you an indication in perspective as to where you are as you're tumbling. So I've turned on some subdivisions here, and I want to change the contrast. So I go back into my user color options under Interface, and I'm going to set those to white so I can get some let's set it to black so I get some further contrast between the blue, the black, and the white lines of the major grid axes. This is really handy if you've got a pretty intense layout that you need to deal with. I'm going to change my subdivisions back to 2 just so it's a little easier to see here on the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on the labels, which will give me measurement indication distances from 0 in my axes. So you can't see in the perspective window, but in your orthographic windows you can. So you can see over on the left-hand column, I've got numeric indications of where these grid lines are setting up at. So this is really helpful, again, so when you're doing your quick layout work and you need to know where you're setting up your surfaces and your curves. That's it. If you have any further questions, head over to the forums at aliasdesign.autodesk.com, and you can follow me on Twitter, jmeg2169. Thanks much.